Hello, gorgeous creatures. I am Audrienne McKeon. This is That's Allowed. And today we have the gorgeous and amazing and wonderful Kristen Joy. Please introduce yourself.
Can you hear how much I'm blushing? Oh, that was sweet. Yes, I'm Kristen Joy. I am the creator of Voluptuous Life, which is all about helping women to step into their power at a body, heart, mind, and spirit level.
Yeah, we got to get holistic on this, right? You got to attack it from all angles, or rather,
You sure
embrace
do.
it.
Yes. Okay, that's more gentle language, but I was like,
Yes.
yes, attack. But yes.
Let's embrace it from all levels. Just
There we go.
all right. So I'll start with my first question, which is what story is the world not getting?
So I've been thinking a lot about this, and it is something that I feel like is more relevant or has become more prevalent in my consciousness, I should say. And I think it's about we live in a time right now that I think there's a lot of awakening going on. And I think we're realizing some behaviors and thoughts and ways of society weren't right to begin with, but now it's things are sort of coming to light and we're being called to step up and to open up and to wise up and all of those good things, right? So I think the one piece that still feels like it's a little too behind is the disconnect that some people have with some animals.
Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I'm primarily speaking about food, although I guess, we could go into the broader range of how animals are used. But what has really shifted for me has been this passion behind, I guess, opening people's eyes to animals as food and whether that's okay or whether it's even in alignment with their own personal morals and values.
Right. Let's step back for a second and talk a little bit more about you were saying how a lot of people are awakening right now, and I think that is so true on so many levels. And I think there's this general sense of, oh no, we're realizing that things are unsustainable, like that the system is unsustainable. But I think the bigger question, as you said, is was this system the right system to begin with? Do we want to sustain this system? Or do we want something new entirely? And I think this piece of it, that piece of being in balance and being in harmony with nature, with all the other creatures, all the other life on this planet, is a huge one. And trying to question that relationship of basically master slave, that we look at animals as, products, as resources for us to use. I think that's a big thing we need to look at and say, does that feel good in our soul?
Yes, I agree with that because, especially, I think we segregate animals into I name this one, I call this one pet. I also call it George or whatever you might name your pet. I invite this one into my house versus I wear this one, I eat this one, right? There's an imbalance there in how we perceive creatures.
Yeah. And if you look back at the history of how we've treated other humans, that is reflected there too, that we like to classify things into, well, these are useful humans and these are garbage. And that's terrible. That's that's just wrong on so many levels. We are connected to everything. And so anytime you try to make something less than you, that's just wrong and it's going to come
Absolutely.
back at you.
Yeah. And I think the more we know about the quote unquote other, the more we can see eye to eye or at least appreciate their humanity and like the qualities about them. And so obviously there's not humanity in animals, but there are things that we share in common, pain and relationships and fear and like siblings and like motherly love, all of those things. So I just think as we're awakening, we should just remember like let's awaken it all.
Yeah. And I think some species are closer to us than we realize in terms of their culture. When, you look at elephants, how they mourn their dead and how they, the grieving process that they go through, it's really similar to what we do and how we handle death. When you look at dolphins and some of their sort of social relationships and the way they
Mhm.
play together, I think it really can start to open your eyes to the fact that, we're not so different than we think we are.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think the more we realize that, the more we start to question some of the choices that we were making just like subconsciously, right? Just because society has done it this way or because we were raised this way. It's the more we see the commonality, then I think the true like love that lives within us as humans in our heart, in our soul, really comes out and helps us really to connect to everyone and everything.
Absolutely. I also want to say, I think we can learn a lot from animals about the bad things that we do too. They they have vices just like we do, and they have problems just like we do. Going back to dolphins, they've observed dolphins basically gang raping and doing terrible things. So,
Yeah.
it's like there. I think we hold them up on a pedestal at the same time that we kind of look down on them, and both are wrong.
Yeah, that's an interesting point too. I volunteer at a wildlife rescue, rehab, and release center, and we would have ducks come in all the time that were gang raped, and it's like horrifying, right?
Yeah.
And then I also think like, well, that's maybe the animal nature, right? And so it's like we can see things that are like gory and seem cruel in the animal world. But then as humans, we also have like a more evolved brain where we have the ability to, rationalize and to learn and to think like, oh, that's probably not a good decision or a fair decision or a loving decision, right?
Right, we have that choice.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, tell us a little bit more about your personal journey into this. Where did this kind of discovery come from, and how has that changed your life?
Yeah. It was very unexpected. I was raised, my mom cooked meals for us, like home cooked meals, beautiful, so much love going into them. But raised eating what we call meat. Never questioned it, never thought about it. Always thought I love animals. I probably loved cats best of all because I was raised with cats. But so I never ever thought about what was on my plate in terms of it being like a being, right?
Yeah.
I and then as I ended up getting I was having allergic reactions randomly that took the form of it's called angioedema. So I would have swelling of my lip
Hmm.
and sometimes swelling of my eye or, one or the other or both. And I couldn't figure out what was causing it, but it was so like debilitating because as an actor or, as a product specialist, like being in the public eye, like I couldn't have a part of my body just swell up and continue on with my job, right?
Yeah.
So it would cause me a lot of stress. And I went to an allergist and he like ran those typical patterns and my results came back that like I was barely allergic to anything. And the like handful of things that I was allergic to, he was like, there's no way it would cause this. So basically, I had no answers. However, there was a marker, the ANA marker for me was elevated. And oftentimes, when people have lupus, ANAs are elevated. So I said to him, well, so what do I do? And he was like, oh, nothing, don't worry about it. Like, just come back in like 6 months. We'll check your values. And I was like, check my values. And then all of a sudden I have lupus. And then you put me on a medication. Like, is that what the plan is? And he literally like looked at me blankly and was like, a shrug of the shoulders, like, you caught me, you know?
Yeah.
So that started me down the path, and I was pre-med, so I've always, like, loved the body and loved science and, like, figuring out how things work, and I'm also, like, pretty, like, kind of a go-getter, so if there's a problem, I wanna find a solution, right? So I thought, okay, well, there's got to be somebody who can help me. And I ended up working with a nutritionist. And the nutritionist basically put me on a clean diet, but it involved like lean proteins in the form of animals. Again, I didn't think twice about it. I was just now eating organic primarily. and then just, pasture raised and making the best choices that I possibly could. And the issue resolved itself. So I was like, wow, there is real power in what we put in our mouths, right? We really have a lot of control over our health. So it was like a good awakening for me. And I think I thought that's the path I'm going to be on with diet.
Yeah.
Cut two, which then brings us nicely into like the meditation piece, because it's a big part of what I do in my life and in my practice with women. I ended up meeting indirectly, lots of story there, but meeting a guru who I studied with. And he put us into a process that was 3 months of being basically vegetarian. And I was like, what? What am I going to do? What am I going to eat? How am I going to do this like autoimmune protocol if I have, if I can only eat vegetables? So that really, I was like forced into becoming vegetarian in the beginning. Okay. Are you still there?
Yeah, did I freeze up on you?
A little bit.
Okay.
Okay.
You didn't
So
freeze on me, but please
so
continue.
okay. So so yeah, I was like, what am I going to do? And I started, doing all those thoughts that some people do, like, how am I going to live without bacon? I feel like that's always like the go-to, but bacon,
But bacon, it's so good.
right? And for me, it was I used to eat, not often because it's not a healthy food, but it's like a delicious, like every once in a while thing. I used to eat Reubens, so I was
Mm,
like, I'm not going to be able to have Reubens. And then there was also the thought that I am type O negative, and there's this whole system of like eating for your blood type.
mhm.
And it was like, well, if you're O negative, you have to eat meat. So there's all of this coming at me. So I was vegetarian for probably the first month, and I wasn't really feeling great. And that just, reiterated in my mind, see, I
See?
have to eat animals. But again, still not seeing them as animals. It's really like seeing it as meat. I have to eat meat.
Mhm.
Um, what I think was happening was a detoxification. I think
Yep.
my body was adjusting. I was getting rid of all of those added hormones, all of the pesticides, all of the, everything that is done to meat, especially in this country, right? So I think my body was feeling those effects. Plus, I probably wasn't making the best nutritional choices now being a new vegetarian because I just really didn't know any better.
Sure.
Yeah. So I would say a couple of months, I was still like taking like 3-hour naps in the middle of the day, but so dedicated to the meditation practice, I wasn't going to stop. And towards the end, I started to actually feel better than I had ever felt. So I wasn't getting sick. I wasn't getting headaches. I was feeling just like consistent energy. Like people would say to me, like, how do you have so much energy? And I would be like, superfoods. Like it's literally my diet. Again, I don't know if I was necessarily equating it to being vegetarian. It was just like all the pieces coming together. And then at some point, I think it was coming to the end of the process, and I could return to whatever behaviors I want. Although, in my guru's teachings and possibly a lot of spiritual teachings, they do say being vegetarian is the best because it's pure. You're not taking on the karma of like, the dead animal, all of those things. But I was free to make my own choice. And I think that's when I started going down that like terrible rabbit hole of watching the PETA videos and like
Oh,
the movies, right? And like I am super sensitive when it comes to like animal cruelty specifically, but just like
yeah.
I don't know, sadness and cruelty in general. So when I started to watch those things, I was like, oh, wow. And something shifted in me where I could no longer see meat as food. It was really like body parts. So I would
Mhm.
go into a grocery store and I would be like, holy cow, look at that whole butcher case of like body parts. Like, and I couldn't see it any other way, which isn't necessarily a great thing, right? But it was something that I think was solidifying for me, like, there's no going back.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Gosh, I have so much to say about all of that. So one of the things I want, I told you this in advance, and I knew this would come up, but so my entire household decided to go vegan
Mhm,
recently. And this happened because we were watching a movie. It was a documentary called The Game Changers. And if you haven't seen it, basically it focuses on how, there's this kind of myth that you need meat to get protein and you like to be um, an athlete or a bodybuilder or anything like this, that being vegan specifically is just like a terrible idea. And this documentary just blows that theory completely out of the water and shows how these athletes are becoming the best in class basically by going vegan. And
mhm,
so that and also the fact that there's all this toxic masculinity wrapped up in this idea of like meat is for real men and
mhm,
real men eat meat, and if you don't eat meat then you're not a real man. And unpacking all that cultural baggage around that was really powerful for my husband David, and he is watching this and going, oh my gosh, I bought that. Like I bought into that big time, and it turns out it's just completely false.
mhm.
And, he, like a lot of men his age, worries about cholesterol, worries about a heart attack, worries about all the things that tend to kill men, especially, but people in general in this country.
Mhm.
And so we decided as a household, like, let's just do an experiment and go vegan for a month. Now, I used to be vegan. I was vegan for 4 years and I was vegetarian for 10 years back in my younger days. And basically, what changed that is I went to Africa and it was just really impossible to get my nutritional needs met as a vegetarian in Africa.
Mhm.
And so then I just kind of didn't go back because it was just so much easier. But now that it's so funny how I always say it's like when you have like a really messy room, right? It just feels overwhelming. And it's like, oh, just throw it anywhere. You get
Mhm.
new junk and you're just like, whatever, throw it over there. But once you start to clean up, it becomes this thing of like things stand out to you. And you're like, oh, I have to get rid of that too. Oh my God, well, I don't want that there. And then when you have a clean room, it's like any little thing that comes in there that doesn't belong stands out immediately. And
Yep.
so I think when you start to clean up your diet and when you start to clean up your body and you start to kind of clean up your ethics and realize, like, oh my gosh, I've been treating these animals like, meat. It really you start to see it. You start to see it everywhere. And you start to see the way that animals are treated and the way that you've treated animals and the way that you've treated your body too.
Mhm.
And the stuff that you've allowed yourself to put in there and just be like, oh, well, it tastes good. So whatever. It's kind of like you were saying about that whole but bacon. Um,
Mhm.
when I, am eating like an omnivore, I love bacon. Bacon's delicious. As soon as I go vegan, and this is again the second time I've done this, I realize I don't want that in my body. Like the very idea of it actually makes me a little bit sick.
Yeah.
And it's because you start to realize how it makes you feel and how it like the result of it gets tied up into the flavor of it. And suddenly it doesn't taste so good anymore. It actually tastes kind of yuck.
Yeah. It is so interesting how, like, we just get clearer, like, our
Yeah.
taste buds get clearer, like, our bodies obviously are getting clearer, so, yeah, that things even, like, when I cleaned up, not talking about just vegetarian, but, like, getting rid of some of the toxicity,
Yeah.
going organic and, just, like, cleaning chemicals, like, if I smell, like, bleach now, I'm like,
Uh-huh.
"Ugh, headache," and I don't feel good, and it's like, that never bothered me before,
Mhm.
it was just as toxic then, but my body is like, we don't accept this anymore.
Yeah, and my husband, oh my God, poor guy, the detox that he has gone through because he's never, done anything with his diet before. Like he just always ate whatever was in front of him and whatever sounded good, you
Yeah.
know?
Oh, bless him for doing this and bless you for
My goodness. And, luckily for him, he's got me who's been through, on this ride before.
Yeah.
And so I know that he needs protein and he can't just eat, whatever he feels like it, as long as he's taking out animal products. Like you have to actually add in all the good power foods and the, combined proteins, all that stuff. And so I'm here to help him kind of keep his nutrition up. But at the same time, man, just like you said, he's been sleeping like crazy, getting crazy, awful headaches. Just, he's like, I thought this would make me feel better. And I just feel so much worse. And I'm like, stick with it, babe. Like, stick with it. And he finally today is like, I feel great. Like, just woke up
Wow.
feeling like, I feel amazing. Like, I've never felt this good. And I'm like,
Ah, I
oh,
hope
thank
he's at a
God it
turning
finally
point.
happened. Yes. I'm really
Beautiful.
hoping. Yeah, because I was like, okay, I thought, maybe at the 2-week mark, things would get better, but it's been pretty much a month.
Yeah. Yeah, I swear my like suffering, for lack of a better word, lasted way longer than a month the first time that I had done it. So yeah, there's
Yeah.
light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, but it's a lot, it's a lot to come out of.
There
Oof.
is, because it's challenging. Food is obviously so complicated, right? It's like
Yeah.
tied with comfort, it's tied with like tradition, it's tied with family. So there's a lot there. So that's why when I started first talking about this, it made me a little bit uncomfortable because I don't want to make people uncomfortable in a way that just hurts them, right?
Yeah.
I don't mind making people uncomfortable in a way that like it might open their eyes and then it might help make the world a better place, but I don't want to be a jerk and I don't want to like rub people the wrong way so that like there's no good that comes out of it. So
Yeah.
it is something that I'm like trying to be so mindful when I speak about it. But I think that like because I'm so clear on like what it has done for me and like how much it's helped me and how much like I just care,
Yeah.
it's getting easier.
Absolutely. It is an important balance. I definitely found last time that I was vegan, the reason that it was so difficult for me and the reason I actually stopped in the end was just because I felt like I was imposing on other people so much that I would go to somebody's house and be the problem child where I couldn't eat the thing that they served me. And I would have to be like, yeah, I can't really eat this. Sorry. Um, and so one of the things that I've really learned is be proactive, make food in advance. If you get invited to somebody's house, bring delicious vegan food. Bring delicious vegetarian food so that you don't feel like you're causing a problem. You're actually bringing them a gift.
Yep.
When you go out to eat, just be mindful about the places that you go and go to restaurants that are going to have good options for you.
Yep.
And if you have one of the things that I've really, really realized is important to me is, don't judge yourself so harshly. Like if you have to shift or change things, like as long as you're making that effort and the vast majority of your diet is plant-based, like you're doing good. You're doing good. It's okay.
Yes,
You can't change the whole world with, one diet. you but you
totally.
but you can do the best for you and for, your family and be that
Absolutely.
example for the people around you.
Absolutely. And I'm not vegan, right? So
Mhm.
it's like some people I'm sure are going to be like, "Well, why aren't you vegan?" Because you care so much about animals and you've seen all the movies and I make a lot of vegan choices, but I'm not 100%. I don't know if I will go 100%. For me, what I'm doing, and I've been vegetarian now for almost 13 years.
Mhm.
That's a lot. That's a lot of
Yeah.
lives saved. Like I feel very comfortable with the choices that I'm making. So to your point, it's like just feel into yourself. Is
Yeah.
this feeling right? Like, don't be so hard on yourself. Do the best you can. Continue to learn and grow and make the changes the more information that comes in. But beating ourselves up is never going to help any cause, right?
No, absolutely not. But yeah, that thing of like feel into your body and feel like, is this right for me? But give it some time too.
Yes.
If if it's not working for you, in the first couple of weeks or even month, like yeah, maybe that's some detoxing that needs to happen. Like give it some time before you say this is not right for me. This is not working for me.
Yes, that's a very good point. I feel like most of the problems happen with the mindset around it, right? Like
Yeah.
I was so quick to be like, well, I'm O negative, or so I need to eat meat. It's like, well, no, because now 13 years, like I have no autoimmune issues, I have no allergies, like all of those things are gone. And I didn't follow any specific protocol that said, you have to do this. I followed what tasted good, what felt good, what was getting me results, and what was in alignment with my like morals and values.
Yeah. And, bodies are so complicated, and everybody's body really is a little bit different. And so I really don't think there's a magic, bullet for everybody. But I do think that it's really important for each one of us to really take a long, hard look at what we are choosing to put in our bodies and what we are choosing to support.
Mhm,
Because if you are eating animal products, you really have to look at the system
mhm.
that is, creating those products, which is slavery, animal
Right.
slavery. And I don't want to be that vegan who's like, free the animal. Like, like you said, I really want to like be gentle and let people make their own choices. I'm just really encouraging everybody to do your own research, find out what's really going on out there, and see if that's something that you want to keep supporting.
Yep.
That's
Yeah,
all. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, I appreciate that. I when I packed up, because we've been, traveling around a bunch. When I
Yeah.
packed up, I use my body as a billboard.
Mhm.
So, because I work as an actor and a model, like I won't support companies unless I believe in them or they're paying me. Well, I'd have to believe in them in order for them to pay me.
Right.
Let's get that clear. But so the things that I wear are things that like I care about. I'm, being supportive of. I'm like making a little bit of a statement for myself, you know? So
Yeah.
when I was packing up, going through all of these t-shirts, and they're like feminist t-shirts, and there's some like animal ones, but a lot of them are feminist, let's be honest. I was thinking, what states am I going to be going through? And like, am I going to be comfortable wearing these t-shirts, Um, and no one until this past weekend has ever said anything about a shirt I'm wearing. And this past weekend, we went to this like amazing, like local, not local, an artist like festival outdoors where artists come from all over and they show like their most magical creations. It was, so good. And I was wearing a t shirt that said runs on veggies. So, not pushing anybody's buttons. It's just like,
Yeah.
and some guy walks up to me and he's like, does your shirt say runs on veggies? And I said, yeah. And he said, mine would say runs on beef. And I was like, okay, all right, here we go,
Yeah.
And I was like, and I want to be centered and like in a good place. And I want to be clear about like what's happening and what I share and my intentions. And let's also say I had had a beer. So that's not a great time for me to be clear and centered and mindful. So what I think is beautiful about like side note having a meditation practice is I feel that I'm guided and protected a lot. So I think what happened in this moment was like, the powers that be, the universe, the magic, my intuition sort of coming in and helping me to be, comfortable with the way that what I said and like how I behaved. But I just said, it sounds like we have different values. And he said something like, well, my coworker has been getting on me all the time about becoming vegetarian because he's a vegetarian. So I was like, oh, interesting. Because from looking at him, I'm sure part of what his coworker was is worried about his health, right?
Right.
So it's like, so now in his consciousness, he's thinking vegetarian, vegetable. So he sees my shirt. And I don't know if it's like if he's being aggressive towards me or confrontational, but there's a good chance that a seed has been planted for him. And
Yeah.
now I'm seed number two, or whatever it is.
Mhm.
So I walked away from that like with so many feelings. He ended up saying, like, I love your shirt. It's great, whatever. And I walked away from that with so many things like, of course it's a man that comes up and like says something about my shirt like
Yeah.
that. And then also like I wonder what his where he was coming from. And then I was like, oh, wasn't it nice that it's another seed planted, like all of the things. But it was such a like beautiful experience for whatever it was to be maybe a teacher but to also be a student, right?
Always so many good opportunities. Opportunities to learn everywhere we go, right? I wanted to go back to something you said earlier. You were talking about a doctor that you saw and how he just sort of said, "Oh, you caught me." I had a similar experience recently. I so I have this thing on the side of my head, and I don't know if you can actually see it there, but it's this little thing that kind of comes and goes with when the sun comes out, it starts to bleed. Now that doesn't seem good to me,
Mhm.
right? Now, I don't know that it's skin cancer exactly, but like, man, that doesn't seem normal, right? If sun
Right.
shines on your skin and then it bleeds, like, that may be a problem, I think.
Wait, you're not a vampire or like a witch or anything, are you?
Well,
That you
I
know
might be a
about?
witch, but that's unrelated, I feel.
Okay.
So so I go to this doctor and I just, pointed it out and I said, this thing kind of periodically comes and goes, and in the sun, it tends to bleed. And she said, "Well, do you scratch it? Are you scratching it because it's itchy?" And I was like, "Well, sometimes, because it scabs over and then it's itchy, and so I scratch it." And I was like, "Yeah, sometimes." And she said, "Okay, well, just put some hydrocortisone on it. It'll be fine." And
Steroid.
so I did that for a year. I put hydrocortisone cream on it every day, and it still comes back.
Mm,
And so, I went to the doctor again and I was like, "Hey, so you told me to put some hydrocortisone on this, but like it's not going away. It keeps coming back." And she's like, "Oh, well then it's probably an arctitic keratosis," is I think what she said. And I was like, "What's that?" And she's like, "Well, it's the first stage of skin cancer. So we should definitely get that looked at." And I was like, "So I've had the first stage of skin cancer for a year? And you just basically told me, like, put some cream on it. It'll be fine."
right.
And that really bothered me, you know? And,
As
the
it
fact
should.
yeah, the fact that I've changed my diet and I've been, really focusing on like getting as healthy as I can be through nutrition, because I really do think that, food is medicine. Um uh, that makes me feel better about that, but at the same time it was really disturbing to me that, our medical system is so siloed, that they can only look at one thing at a time instead of looking holistically at like what all is going on here, and listening to people when they say, "This doesn't seem right to me, like my body's telling me something's wrong." And I
Yep.
so often feel shut down when I come in and say things like that. And I know especially women of color experience that a lot, feeling
Yep.
shut down when they come in and say like, "I think this is really going on with me." So can you talk a little bit more about like that body intuition and how we as women can kind of empower ourselves, especially when we go into, the medical community?
Yeah, it's definitely challenging, you know? I think that it's connected to, especially as women, and obviously I can only speak for myself, but like sometimes I speak on behalf of women, but I don't mean to blanket us, but that our society doesn't teach us to use our voice and to use our voice strongly or to use our voice loudly, or all of the things that like men are allowed to do or expected of men, or that we turn a blind eye to, whatever. So I think a big piece is like getting comfortable and confident within ourselves, knowing that like we have a right, especially when it's about our own bodies. Like, I mean, this is what carries our being around our entire lives. Like if we don't have a right to control this or ask questions about it, like who does, right?
Yeah.
So I completely understand though, like going into a doctor's office, there's limited time, first of all, right? It's like they are like this.
Yeah.
So you got to have your questions, which, they often don't either have the time for them, or maybe don't have the kinds of answers that somebody like me, or maybe like you would be looking for, right? So they're doing the best they can possibly do with limited time, limited information, maybe limited interest. Maybe they don't even want to like know about nutrition. Maybe they don't even believe in the science behind it, right? So I think what's important is getting clear on what you're feeling, what you're experiencing, paying attention to that, and starting to really make notes about it. I think it's so important. Like hopefully people get their blood work every year. It's really up to you to make sure that your blood work is staying consistent like year to year. Like I always tell my clients, like make sure you're checking. You get your results from this year, check last year. What's changed? Like always be aware of what is changing for you, because your doctor has too many patients and their own health and their own family. They can't keep track of all of these nuances. So besides tuning in, listening, you really have to be your own like researcher and statistician and all of that, which may sound like a lot because our lives are all very full. But if you just get into the habit of like, okay, I just saw my doctor, when I get the labs back, I'm going to just reference last year's, it's going to take 10 minutes, I'm going to be aware. And then you come to your doctor too with maybe some questions, right? And if they don't have time for it, that's what second opinions are for. Doctors are going to hate to hear this, but I think that's what Google's for.
Well, I think you have to be your own advocate
Yeah.
too, and I actually, a wonderful woman of color taught this to me, this little trick, which is when you go into a doctor's office and you ask them to do something or to prescribe you something or to run a test and they refuse, ask them to please write that in your
Mhm.
record. Say, can you please make a note that you're refusing to test me for that? Or can you just please, make a note that you're not going to pursue that? And 9 times out of 10, just that little trigger will make them go, actually, if you really think this is important, let's do it.
Yep, that's a great tip. Yes.
Yeah. So
Which is
let's,
interesting.
oh,
I'm
go ahead.
sorry, I wonder what besides like malpractice and worrying about that, I wonder like that doesn't it seems like what? Why? Why is that all that it takes, Anyway.
Well, I think it is partly a malpractice thing, but it's also when you say that, I think it makes them realize you're serious about this. This is not just something that you're curious about. Like
Mhm.
this means something to you, and you want that noted on your record for the next person who comes along. And I think that's a cue to them to say, "Oh, she really means business
Yeah,
on
okay, good
this."
point.
Yeah. So it's about that time to transition into my little visualization exercise that I love to do with my I see you getting comfortable
Uh-huh,
already. I
I'm
love
getting
it. I love
cozy.
it. You know what's coming here. Yes. So let's close our eyes and I'm going to have you breathe in colored light. So just take a nice deep breath. Beautiful. And then tell me what color your light was.
Gold.
Take another breath. Was it the same or different this time?
Oh, now I'm pulling in hues of pink.
I love it. I love it. Okay. So I'm going to wave my magic wand over here, and everything is now exactly as it should be. Not just for you, but for the whole world. The world is just as it should be. Everything that you deeply desire is now real. And just tell me what you see in this new ideal reality.
The first thing that I pictured was just people smiling.
Hmm.
So then it's just this energy of joy and acceptance and just this feeling that like everyone is a friend.
Hmm. That's beautiful. And I want you to tell me what you hear.
So in this magical, perfect world, I
Mhm.
hear sounds that are all natural sounds. So the birds chirping and the breeze rustling the limbs of the trees and maybe some geckos scurrying along the ground. And I can hear the sound of my own heartbeat because I'm so still and centered within myself.
I want you to feel the grass on your toes, on your bare feet. and just decide you're going to take a little walk, and you can feel that grass and you can feel the sun on you as you start to walk. And as you walk, you start to see animals. And I want you to tell me what you see as you go by.
I get the image of me all of a sudden being, I think, is it Snow White? Yeah, Snow White.
Yes.
Except, I think she's blonde in this visualization, or, at least blonde hair, even if it's dark roots.
Cinderella also had animal friends, if you recall.
Okay, all right, good. So I picture them all just coming around, like knowing that I'm a safe space and that I'm, a friend, an ally, like knowing that we're all connected. So I picture them just climbing all over me, running around me, just doing their own thing, but also engaging with me out of like love and curiosity.
Hmm. And so they kind of lead you to a space, a little clearing that just feels really ideal to you. Tell me about it.
Well, this is interesting because I wouldn't picture that I would go there, but I picture myself like on the very edge of a cliff
Hmm.
overlooking like mountains and a valley, like fog and trees.
And so you're sitting there looking out at this just peaceful, balanced world, this beautiful reality where nothing is out of whack. And I want you to just feel that for a moment, that peace that that brings. There's nothing to fix, there's nothing to change. Everything is just as it should be. And then something unexpectedly wonderful happens. What is it?
I have a butterfly landing on my nose.
Hmm.
And it doesn't scare me. It's just gentle and beautiful and like a little miracle.
Wonderful. And I want you to feel like you can actually communicate with that butterfly. Like you can kind of feel what it's trying to communicate to you. What does that butterfly want you to know?
She wants me to know that I have wings too.
Hmm. I want you to feel that you have wings. You genuinely have just sprouted wings. And I want you to take them for a spin. Tell me what that feels like.
Oh, well, now I know why I'm at the edge of the cliff.
There you
So
go.
this is like a beautiful, like complete release and surrender. So diving off the cliff and just feeling supported and lifted by the wind, but also exhilarated by the adrenaline and the joy of being able to do something like this.
Well, I think that's a perfect place to stop. I'm going to have you open your eyes there. What a beautiful metaphor for leaping and letting the universe catch you.
That was cool.
It's
Oh.
always fun, isn't it? Like you think you know what you're going to see and then you see something completely different.
Yeah, I love just that we can create spaces where we could just be open and then have like just beautiful things come into our reality, because I
Yeah.
don't know if I would have scripted that, but that was beautiful.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, thank you so, so much for being here and for sharing your beautiful experience and wisdom with my audience. Can you please tell them where they can find more of your wonderfulness?
Of course. Well, first of all, thank you so much. It's a pleasure and an honor. I much appreciate it. So I can be found at voluptuouslife.com. First, you'll have to learn how to spell it. Then you can find it. Voluptuous, there's no M. People mispronounce it all the time. So voluptuouslife.com. And that is my Instagram and my Facebook as well. So that's basically the best way to find me. And I'm happy to receive emails with questions. I'm here to support.
And I'll have that spelling in the show notes. So no,
Perfect.
no problem. You don't have to look it up. All right. Have yourself a beautiful, wonderful day, my dear.
Thank you so much. You too.